I'd like to welcome today's chair, Dr. Juma Sadukan. Juma is an associate professor in sustainable resources at the Centre for Environment and Sustainability at the University of Surrey. So she'll be running today's session. Juma, over to you.
Thank you very much, Angie. It's a huge pleasure to chair this session, very, very important session. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing our two phenomenal speakers, Dr. Mar Batista and Dr. Natalia Jawiarczyk. So just to tell you the time we are going to keep is the introduction would be about 5 minutes, and then 20 to 25 minutes presentation from Dr. Mar, who would give the overview on adding value to the engineering, societal, and behavioral factors in FOG management. Then we would have about 15 minutes question answer session. As Angie said, please do post your questions on the chat box and do use emoji to vote if you would like to have that questions to be posed. We'll keep an eye on the chat box and we'll ask those questions to our eminent speakers. Then Natalia would give her presentation on bioremediation of oil-rich wastewater, managing sewer FOG deposits with bio-additive products for about 25-30 minutes, and that would be followed by, again, question answer session for 15 minutes. And after that, the virtual forum will be open for question answer and discussions, and we'll expect some very interactive, intense session engaged in deep discussion in this topic. So now to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Mar Batista. She is a technical manager at British Water. Mar started her involvement with the water industry in 2005 as a consultant in the irrigation sector in Spain. Mar has a broad understanding of the current water and environmental challenges due to her education as an agricultural engineer and her doctorate education in environmental science and sustainable water treatment. Mar is responsible for British Water's technical services, including the company publications portfolio, 7 technical focus groups, technical conferences, and the Secretariat of the Greece Contractors Association and BIM for Water Group. Over to Mar. The virtual floor is yours, Mar. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. Let's just share the screen. Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. I would like to start just saying something that it might seem very obvious, but I would like to highlight that every engineering problem has a societal and a behavioral factor behind that affects the problem. And engineers, researchers, and scientists need to be fully aware of this whole picture in order to find the best solution for the problem. So thank you everyone for joining today, and welcome to this exciting journey through our sewers. So my name is Mar Batista, and I worked as a technical manager at British Water, as was introduced. Just a brief overview of British Water for those who are not familiar. We are a trade association, and we work with around 200 members from all range of sectors in the water industry, from people that work with sewage and sewers and waste, and people that works with analytics and artificial intelligence. So we represent the interests of our members in front of our stakeholders. We connect them to raise their profiles and to grow their business, and we promote best practice in the water and wastewater industry. So I would like to ask how many of you are aware of the Fatberg issue? I don't have a pool, but maybe you can wave And you might recall that it was a very in the media around 2018 and 2019. It was very popular. And it was because it was something that it was kind of unknown, that the media showed it, that it was growing in our sewers, and because also of the impact in the daily operation of the sewers, and as well of the magnitude of the problem. As you can read, some of them were pictured as Titanic Fatberg, or some of them were also called, they were like the size of a double-decker. So you can imagine how big they were, the size of a double-decker. So just an introduction of what is a fatberg. So a fatberg is a mix of fat, oils, and grease, and wet wipes. And why they are a problem is because they just block our sewers, because they become like hard rock. I'm sure that Natalia is going to go into a bit more detail into all the science behind it, but just to give you a brief overview, that's what is the fatberg. They become a problem because they become really hard, and they produce a burst in our sewers with the consequences and the mess that you can imagine that it can happen when there is a burst of wastewater. It has also some other type of pollution and consequences in the environment and down in the sewage treatment as well. Just few numbers, around 370,000 blockages happens in the sewers, and about 70% are known to be caused by bad fog blockages or fatbergs. So just to give you also a big of the numbers, and so you can see how big the problem is. This is numbers from Thames Water, and Thames Water gives service to around 50 million customers in the London area, and domestic customers, and around more than 43,000 food service establishments in the London area, and they take care of around 108 kilometers of sewers. So, as I was saying, this fatberg problem has a wide range of topics that relate to the problem, like legal issues, sociological and behavioral issues, operational issues, and research issues. So I'm going first to focus on the domestic side and how these sociological and behavioral issues affect the fatberg problem. Although I think Natalia is also going to go into a bit more detail into this, and it is kind of unknown exactly which is the domestic side of this problem, like the quantification, but still is about us, all of us, including also the ones that are in this meeting, all the domestic customers that pour down our drain the fat, oils, and grease, and just the grease from our cooking at home. We should not be doing this, and it's very hard to change behavior, but still, just for those who are in the meeting now, if you're still doing it, it's very easy to just put your cooking oils in a glass jar and bring it to the recycling center, or just scrap it with a kitchen paper and bin it. But you never should be pouring down your drain your cooking oils. The other addition to the problem, the fat, oil, and grease, is the wet wipes. This is something that is very related with behavioral issues, in the sense that they have been introduced very recently in our habits. I think there is like around 14,000 wet wipes that are used every second. 14,000 wet wipes every second in the UK. So you can imagine what is the magnitude of the problem. And the problem is that these wet wipes we have been using it for clean our babies, clean surfaces, and now with COVID they have been used a lot. And also they have recently replaced toilet paper. The problem is the toilet paper really dissolves in water, but wet wipes do not. And we need to be very careful with not to flush our wet wipes down the toilet. So that's the second message. The first one is don't pour down your cooking oils as a domestic uses, and the second one is please don't flush your wet wipes down the toilet. Another number I think is very representative is that around 30 wet wipes are found every 1,000 meters in the UK beaches every year. So this is one of the behavioral issues that is affecting the Fatberg problem. The recently used an introduction of wet wipes, and also the misunderstanding of some of the manufacturers without including some fine to flush advertisement in their packaging. There is only one standard for wet wipes that are fine to flush, and it's the one that you can see in the image. And I would recommend, if there is not this stamping in the package, please don't flush it, or please don't ever flush it. But so that's one of the main sociological and behavioral issues in the domestic side. But as I said before, there is also this old hospitality sector that also we have to deal with. Degrees that this food service establishment, hospitality, that also includes like hospitals, schools, etc., that it is put into the wastewater, and then it can cause a blockage in the sewer. And the only one of the main way to avoid this is to catch or to capture this grease before it is discharged into the network, and this is through grease management systems. But there is all these legal and regulatory issues around this, and that's what I'm going to just explain a bit in a second. So, as I was mentioned, the food service establishments, the only way that they can catch this fog before discharging into the sewer, it's around these grease management systems. There are a few, but there is no legislation requiring to fit this grease management in commercial kitchens or in FSCs. I'm going to go a bit into more detail. So it is mentioned in few of the legislation, but for example, it's mentioned in the building regulation, and it's only mentioned around one type of these management systems. It's only mentioned one standard, but it's, as you can read, it's mentioned in should, and also it is also at the end of the sentence it is added or other effective means of grease removal. So it gets, very broad and not very specific. So why these food service establishment hospitality will need to introduce these grease management system if there is no legislation that requires them to do so. In the Water Act, it's also mentioned that everyone, including you and me, that discharge anything that interferes in the flow of the wastewater, then it is a criminal offense. So this has been used by the industry and many water companies in order to encourage change and also to enforce prosecution. But it's very difficult also for the water companies to gather evidence of who is doing this or discharging this. You can imagine a high street full of fish and chips restaurants, and it's just very difficult to find evidence on that. And regarding to standards, as I mentioned in the building regulation is mentioned, what standard, the 1825. But this standard, even if it's mentioned in the building regulation, it has not been adopted in the UK. So it's mentioned that it has not been adopted. So that's kind of not clear as well. It was not adopted because many reasons, but one, it was because in the testing, it was used the marine diesel for testing, and as well there are no testing facilities in the UK, so it's not easy to get your product tests. So manufacturers just claim that they have, you know, design in accordance with, but they have not been many of them tested. So this is for one type of risk management systems, and there is no standard for all the types of risk management systems as risk removal units or biological dosage systems. And I believe this is what Natalia is going to go a bit more in detail later on. Also, for example, related with the food hygiene ratings, it can be linked, the food hygiene and the management of white oils and grease in the kitchen. However, the industry is also looking at, for example, including the correctly fog management in the kitchen with rating that you can see in the door in each of them. The food service establishments that you go, that is ranked from 1 to 5, but it is something that it has not been done yet. And for example, also there is no discharge consent yet for fog. There are many also technical reasons behind that, but if we can get at the point that we can quantify the amount of fog, and it would be easier to set discharge consent, that will help also to fight the problem. So just this big overview and these the problems and lack of clarity in the legislation. So if we want to introduce change in something that is creating the problem, then it's just this message that change takes time and resources. So in the side of the domestic user that I was introducing at the beginning, water companies have engaged with customers and they are running a lot of campaigns, but it's difficult to, it takes time to change behavior and to make people aware of the problem, and still some fog is unavoidable. In relation with the food service establishments, as well, water companies have dedicated teams that visit, and they have different kind of campaigns to tackle the FSCs and the problem areas that they have identified. However, for example, Thames Water in 2018 were able to visit around 1,300 FSCs, and they have a program with 3-visit journey to enable to talk to the FSCs and to try to change their behavior and to introduce risk management systems. But they were successfully with around 600. But if we come back to the numbers of the more than 14,000 just for Thames Water, you can imagine the daunting task that it's on the limited resources that they have. And as well, something that I always like to point as well is that imagine now, for example, with the problem that the hospitality is having with the COVID-19, if there is no legislation that is telling them that they have to do it and not clear guidance on the standards and what it needs to be done, just fog and waste management is one of the least in the priorities. And also there is a lot of rotation in the employees in the FSCs, so it's also causing a problem. Like you always need to keep the information and training people all the time. So it's difficult to keep this behavioral change. When you have someone trained, something new comes into the kitchen, and it's also creating a problem. So just as a summary of all this information, and hopefully you had a better picture of the fog problem and how it's related with behavioral change and legislation. Just to pick a couple of things. So as I was saying, behavioral change takes time and resources, and well, we can start a conversation. Also, will be another conversation that who is paying these resources that need to be put in place. The standards and legislation, we know that always have to speed up behavioral change. We have seen it, for example, with the smoking bans, etc. And we are hoping that there is a sewage inland water bill that it's in the second reading now. It has been delayed because of COVID, but it's including the pollution created with the flashable products, wet wipes, and it's mentioned for the first time fat oils in food service establishment with the word prohibiting. So we are hoping that if this bill passes, that it will make a difference. So research and innovation also is slow, as it's an industry driven, and we are all the stakeholders working really hard in order to bring it up into the government agenda and the innovation agenda. And as I was saying, we can all take our part. We all are domestic users, and we can all change our behavior just at home, so we can also play our part in the problem. We're also hoping that this problem will be high up in the agenda, and it can help to reach net zero targets for the country, and it can be included also as food waste, and it can also be included, and you can put it up in the agenda of the circular economy and the full recycling. So that's all from me, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mar. So we have got some questions from the audience. From David Tompkins. Separate collection of food waste from households and businesses will become compulsory in England from 2023. This sounds like a good opportunity for cross-sector messaging and action. Waste and water sector. Any thoughts?
Yes, that's what I was mentioning at the end, that we're hoping that it can be in the list of food waste, it can be included fog, and we are working very closely with DEFRA and RAP and other stakeholders. However, there is a kind of reluctance still to include fog as a food waste, but we are hoping that this can be done and it will make a difference.
And then that was followed by a comment. So I'll just read out the comment and then I'll move to another question. Martin Kingsley commented, yes, it does. Not a lot of time to put a shared load of infrastructure, however. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Can you repeat the question, please?
It's not a question, it's rather a comment. Martin said, yes, it does. Not a lot of time to put a shared load of infrastructure, however. He's suggesting that not a lot of time left between 2021 and 2023 to act on it.
Yes, that's why we need to be, we need to be fast. And I was saying that it takes time, though, these behavioral change, and they're trying to drive. And if it's not compulsory, something, it is not, if you don't have to, and your list of tasks, I was saying, is very, very long, then you need to have a very, very good reason in order to do it. So that's why we are trying to bring together all the stakeholders and trying to put it into the agenda, in the legislation, and that will make the difference, hopefully.
Okay. I'll move on to the other questions, but I have got another question. I mean, what is stopping from enforcement of these standards?
Enforcement of, well, the standards are not has like the word, and it's not it's optional. You don't have to, and then and also the standards is not adopted, so there is no standard is not adopted, and also they're optional. So then it's like, why are you going to fit a grease trap of a grease management that is following the standards? So that's why it needs to be a clear direction, a clear understanding, and it needs to be a review. And actually, the standard for the passive grease trap, the 1825, is due for a review. So hopefully, we'll have a review that it will give some light and it will be adopted, and that will help.
Thank you. How much collaboration has there been with companies that are researching using FOG as fuel? I imagine they can be used as the carrot to the legislation stick. This is from Emma Burns.
Yes, so I believe in the audience some people that work with these from Argent Energy, and this is something that it has been done and it's done, but it's still the collection and all the infrastructure that needs to be done in the UK is not fully developed. So there's still some work to do in order that we can collect and treat all the fact that it has been produced, and still first we need to collect it and to be able to be separated from the wastewater and to be able to produce as fuel and recycling, and to include it into the circular economy that I was mentioning before.
Thank you. Mar, when Scotland mandated separate food waste collections for businesses over a certain size, they also prohibited in-sink incinerators. Do you know if there has been any resultant improvement in their FOG-related sewer blockages? And this is from Angie.
So in Scotland, I'm not sure about this Scotland. I don't know if there's someone from Scottish Water in the audience that might be able to help us here. From my side, it's okay if you want to just introduce yourself and give us some light about this in Scotland and the food macerators, if it had helped.
Anyone would like to speak up? Please unmute and speak up to help in the discussion.
I thought Martin had a good thought there. He said some test pump stations have approved. I don't know, Martin, did you want to comment? Because I think you'd commented further down on that.
Yeah, just because we've been roundabout quite a few times over the years. There have been test pump stations, and please, if there is someone from Scottish Water here, please don't let me speak on your behalf. I'd rather you give the detail. But from our experience, there have been focused pieces of work which have shown dramatic changes in the infrastructure. But again, it's mostly post consumer or post FSE. So these would be things around the infrastructure or pumping stations, and they've seen, you know, how they can cope or debottle better. So in that sense, yes, there certainly has been success, and that is one approach. I mean, if you want, we're talking about these 2023, deadlines. I mean, we've just been rejected for an Innovate UK grant, which was a massive consortium of people putting infrastructure in the city of Liverpool. That was very disappointing. We actually scored very highly as well, but just by the sheer competition for these kind of grants, that's why we didn't get it. We were way above the 80% pass mark, but there was just people with better scores. So that to me says that we can put together a good case that is viable, commercially acceptable, blah blah blah. So we've certainly done a lot of the work on that already. But it was just disappointing that we won't see that, and we won't see that ahead of 2023. And there are lots of other things that we've done. You know, we do a lot of stuff with water companies up close. So we've been to heads of work. We've dehydrated, taken dehydration trailers to heads of work at water pumping stations and taken Fatbergs from there. We still take them into the plant. Still have some great relationships with water companies, but the prize for us and the problem is so big. I mean, for us, we still import feedstock, not fog feedstock, but other fats that you would need for biodiesel from around the world, whereas all of it is on our doorstep, but we don't have the infrastructure to get that. And that was one of the key reasons why we built our site in the northwest, was because we wanted a domestic feedstock. And the pressures, I mean, from our point of view, and from anybody in the kind of, you know, renewable fuel space that is using lipid chemistry, that feedstock is just becoming more and more expensive. So this solution for us is, you know, is very appealing. But, you know, unfortunately, the guy who used to really head up a lot of the work for us has left, and he had a very well ploughed walk. You know, he had a he could speak about waste fats up and down the UK. So Argent Energy will always be interested in this, because we've got a pre-treatment plant that can deal with this kind of material. But there's still issues around, you know, I guess, meaningful aggregation of these fats for potential customers, waste users, however you want to say it. That's a sort of quick summary without giving you chapter and verse.
Thank you. So we move on to the next question. Effigy classification might be a problem if digested with sludge, for example. Any comment, Mar?
Yes, so I know that there has been some issues about problems bringing fog into wastewater treatment and then be able to be included in the digesters. That's why it needs to be clear, maybe separation before, and then it can be channeled through this circular economy. But yeah, definitely something that we need to look at.
David Tompkins continued to ask questions. Should fine to flush be banned?
Well, if it's this fine to flush that I show you this stamp, this is from WRC, from the Water Industry Research Center, and it's the only standard that it's approved, and it's the standard that it should be the only that should be flushed, kind of. But in my opinion, like anything should be down the toilet should be the 3 P's, like poo, pee, and paper. That's it, and we're out of problem. But this is also some issues around behavioral change and understanding from the domestic users. What happens once you flush the toilet? It's not that you flush and the magic happens and everything just disappears. So that's also part of the problem, to make people understand what is happening of everything that you flush. If you go to a wastewater treatment plant, you find, name it, everything. And I guess it's part of the problem. But definitely, I will just ban the flushables if I were. But it's a big industry, and
yeah. Okay, moving on to another question from Maria Ramos Suarez. Would people be more inclined not to flush the oils down if there was a fat oil recycling program in place?
Yes, like everything, if we make it easy, because now you have to put it in a jar, keep it in your house and bring it to the recycling center that might be close or not, close to your place or not. Now you have to make an appointment because of COVID time. So anything that we do to make it easy for everyone, definitely it will change. I guess it also happened with the paper. Like before, it was not like paper and recycling bins in every household, and now it is, and the same with food waste. So the easier it's, the better, definitely.
Yeah. Sonia Heaven, as you know, is the lead of EBNet. She's asking, very interesting point. There have been a number of studies comparing environmental impacts and benefits of separate collection versus in-sink grinders for food waste, but I'm not sure they consider full impact of FOG, and I'm always skeptical on this type of assessment.
Yes, I'm not very aware of these sink grinders, and anything that we use to then dispose into the wastewater, I will say, in my opinion, just it's easier to separate before than after. So I will say that it's better always to separate before and to bring it before than after. But
Rafaela Villa.
I think Natalia wants to say.
Yeah, if I can comment on the grinders, I saw one of the presentation when actually the girl was doing her PhD on the impact of the grinders. So from what she said, they would not see any negative effects on the sewer networks where they were using those grinders. However, from my point of view, Mar mentioned that there are different research that actually quantifies how much of the fog comes from the domestic or from commercial sources. So one of the studies from 2015 actually showed that around 70 to 80% of fog found in a UK sewers comes from the domestic establishment rather than from commercial. And another important thing is to remember that fogs are not only coming in an obvious form of fat, oil and grease. There is a lot of fog in a dairy products, a lot of fog in baked goods, in personal care products, in meat juices. So by using those grinders, you just introduce the more of the food waste into the sewer. So you might be introducing more of the fog and make it easier to aggregate in a sewer lines. So.
Yep, thank you. FOG is classified as animal byproduct. Does it? I think it's a question or the comment, but
I think there was a comment from Rafi.
Yeah, Rafa. Yeah. Then there is another question, a kind of deposit fee system added per liter of oil could help recycling instead of flushing.
Where is this question? That's just one. Can you repeat it? I was just reading through the question, but I was not finding it.
There are a lot of questions actually, but I think we're halfway through. We have to stop and move on to the next presentation, and then in the end, we take all the combined questions to time manage. So again, I'm repeating the question, a kind of deposit fee system, yeah, added per liter of oil could help recycling instead of flushing. So I think if there is a monetary incentive to this recycling process, should this help? If I have understood it correctly, should this help instead of flushing it down?
Flushing the oil. So okay, I was like, yeah, I thought it was the wet wipe. So I was like, not understanding the question. So there is any monitoring for? I mean, I think that I just referred also to a comment from Rafi. It's like, well, always if we separate at source, it's easier than we discharge anything. It's like it's making hard work into the sewer treatment, is putting pressure into the sewer, the wastewater treatment plants. It's costing us more money, and I will always go for separating at source, even if it's so it's like just need to stop dumping things through the wastewater.
I think David here answered to Rafi, saying food waste should all be going to ABP compliant anaerobic digestion. So FOG should not be an issue if added to solid waste collection. Might make the process quite lively. You agree, or have you got any comments on that?
Shouldn't be an issue, but the solid waste collection as a process. Yes, well, it's if I think it comes to each of the water companies if they are taking these into the ADs or not. On from what I understand, some of them are not allowing because it then putting some pressure in the process. But if someone from the water company is around and they know a bit more about it, my knowledge is quite limited with all the AD processes. So apologies if I cannot comment on that more deeply.
Sonia has asked a question.
Maybe Natalia is also wants to say something about the AD.
Oh, okay. Yep.
No, I just wanted to, well, I'm not the expert in AD. It's just I saw a couple of articles when they say that you need to have a delicate balance how much of the fog you actually add to your digesters, so it can improve your AD, but then you need to do it. You need to do it carefully. So that would be my comment.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay. Sonia asked a question. Do speakers or anyone have any suggestions on best way to tackle the categorization issue? Categorization of feedstock, I think. For, I think, segregation at household level. Sonia, would you mind to clarify if I have understood the question correctly?
Sure, yes, it was really related to Rafi Via's remark about fog classification being a problem, and it made me think because evidently the classification of fog changes depending on where you pick it up. Yes, and it's always easier to alter regulations than physics, chemistry, the real world. Yes, so I really just wondered whether either of the speakers or indeed David or anyone else had a comment about what's the best way to alter the regulation to remove that anomaly. And it applies to co-digestion of food waste and sewage sludge just as much as it would apply to fog here. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, question was really how would we change the regulations to get round that? Has anyone already thought that through? Or Rafi?
Yeah, I would love to hear if anyone has any thoughts on that.
Can I chip in? It's Dave Tompkins. That's okay. Yeah, just to highlight the regulations, as I'm sure most of us are aware, are a complete dog's breakfast at the moment. There is a strategy underway to iron out some of the discrepancies between the waste industry and water industry's approach to processing certain materials, but that is very much a work in progress. So yeah, absolutely, there are many opportunities for simplification, combination, reclassification, which are being explored actively at the moment. And we could spend an entire day talking about regulations, and I suggest that we don't do that.
There is a comment from David again on the chat box. On the categorization issue, this is a current work in progress for the regulators. Part of the issue is that the water and waste industries have different interpretations of the regulatory requirements. Yet another reason for cross-sector collaboration. Yeah. And then he suggested that please see me after you'd like more info, if you would like more info.
Yeah, I will definitely. Thank you.
Okay. So lots of legislations related question. I just had another question on, you mentioned about marine diesel for testing. Is that something a test could be done online and at household scale to measure the water concentration? I mean, could you elaborate on that?
So this is for the testing of the standard, the BS-EN 1825. So it was suggested that the testing for this standard is done with marine diesel. What I believe is far different from what it's the fog of the oils and fats and grease that it's coming from a kitchen. So that what it was not adopted because it was suggested that it's not recreating real or at least not very real conditions of a kitchen. So that's the reason why there is no the real trust and that the testing of the standard is going to give good results.
Thank you very much, Mar, for a remarkable presentation. Really enjoyed it. Please stay with us to answer the questions later on. But